What's up, horror fans? Anchorpete here, and as always, I'm with my good friend Danny, Mr. Dr. Zayas God. Danny, how you doing? Oh,
I'm
you got
good.
like a Dr. Zayas shirt. That's awesome. Okay,
I'm actually repping my screen name today,
your
my
brand,
Twitter
huh?
handle.
Nice. And I can't believe this, but we're sitting down with one of my favorite authors right now. We are sitting with Mr. Josh Mallerman. Josh, welcome to the show, sir.
Hi guys, hi everybody, and I'm freaking thrilled to be here.
Josh, just so you know, a lot of our fans are like horror movie fans, right? And I don't
Okay.
think a lot of them are familiar with horror literature.
Okay.
Just so they know, just to kind of bring them up to speed, Josh has written multiple books, and probably his most famous book is Bird Box, which, of course, you guys know was made into this tremendous Netflix hit.
I know you have a new book coming out this October, and was kind of hoping you can give us like the book jacket synopsis of Pearl, just to start out with.
Dude, I will, but warning, this has forever been like the one book that is real weird to pitch. Like I remember when I came up with the idea, I was at a bar with a friend and I'm like, okay, just stay with me, man. So you got a telekinetic pig, all right, on the farm, who's like, the whole book is the day the pig is realizing the extent of its powers and what it can do. And it begins with the pig more or less convincing, without speaking, convincing the grandson of the farmer to slaughter a sort of rival pig in the pen. And my friend's like, this sounds like fucking insane. And I'm like, and then by the end, everyone in town is wrapped in Pearl as the pig. Everyone's wrapped in Pearl's web, and nobody's even themselves anymore. It's like an identity crisis. Pearl is controlling everyone. And that's pretty much the synopsis of this book. And anytime that me and my manager have pitched this to a publishing house or like the film side or that, every time it's met with sort of, what else you got? But
it's your average Charlotte's Web meets Carrie. I mean, who hasn't heard that a million times?
I think you're right. I think that's exactly right. And for whatever reason, I don't know if I just had pep in my step, but this is probably the scariest one that I have so far. And my family, it's like all of their favorite, like my brother and my dad and my sister and my dad's friends. And so it's always been like an odd situation I'm in where I'm like, I want to tell them about Pearl, but I think you just got to read this one. But I did tell you about it. That's what it's about.
We're thinking of like Animal Farm too, with the comparisons too, like Sentient Pigs.
Well, I will say this: I am a vegetarian, but I didn't necessarily set out like for a wholly, revenge on the meat industry book or something. It doesn't come off that way. Pearl is absolutely empowered in this book. There's no doubt about that. But it's more of like a sludgy intelligence. It's like somewhere between man and animal. You know what it almost kind of reminds me of in a way is if you put a microscope or magnifying glass up to that moment in 2001 where the ape starts like using the bone as a tool. And you're like, something new happened here today, and that's what's happening on this farm today.
You had me a telekinetic pig. So
well, look, you know what, dude? Same here. And I actually feel like this would be a really amazing like animated horror, but like scary, like trying to be full blown horror, full horror soundtrack and all that. I don't know anyone in that field or that world, but I've talked to my manager about that before, and like maybe we can make that happen.
Yeah. There's that Netflix show, right, with the robots. What's it called? Like Love and Robots?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like I think and it's all like shorts though. It's like super short.
Yeah,
little episodes.
Yeah, and to go for it, like maybe you guys know, and your audience would definitely know. Like I don't know much about like animated, like legitimate scary animation. I don't know much about that. Do you guys?
One of my favorite movies growing up was Heavy Metal. And when I think of like scary animation, I think of like some of the scenes in Heavy Metal where like people just like were like eviscerated and like the zombies in the airplanes.
Right. Because think about it, you wouldn't have to worry about the budget. I mean, well, you do with animators, but you don't have to worry about the technical effects budget. I mean, it's animated, right? And I think about like the credits, the opening credits for like Creepshow. the original movie. And if it had that vibe for a whole movie, so you sort of that weird like off-putting animation with the scary awesome music, and I'm like, this could be like a full movie. It doesn't have to be like a credit sequence.
That would be really interesting. I'd love to
get like stoned out of our minds and watch that movie.
And then you don't have to worry about like training an actual pig to like act in
Right.
movie. Pete and I had we literally messaged each other right before this interview started about bringing up Creepshow, because season 3 just started on Shudder, and you just mentioned you had a story you wrote. I think it's one of mine and Pete's favorite episodes so far. The house with the head.
The house with the head, yeah.
Yeah. And I think what made it so scary for me is that, and Pete's in the same vein, we both have young daughters.
Oh.
And so our houses have been beset by doll houses in the last 11 years. And that episode was so creepy. Are you planning on coming back to Creepshow and doing any more work with them? Because
I do. I wrote one, and it's in season 3.
Nice.
I really wanted to get on on the set for all that. It's not even that far. It's like a couple hour flight from here. Atlanta is where they do it, and but during the whole COVID thing and everything, we didn't end up going. But I saw photos, and I saw some video, a little bit behind the scenes, and I've heard that it's especially scary. That's what I've heard. I haven't seen it yet. And with House of the Head, I did see it before it came out. Allison, my girlfriend, and I we watched it here at home, but I haven't seen this one yet. It's called Familiar, and I haven't seen it, but I've heard good things about it so far. I don't know where it is in the rollout, or if it's the next episode or next whatever, but I don't even care. I'll just watch every episode, just like a fan, and then when mine shows up, I'll be like, holy cow.
Yeah, we're talking about our daughters, right? My daughter Pepper, she's just getting into horror right now, and that episode of Creepshow that you wrote was like one of her gateway into horror experiences.
Wow.
Yeah. She really loved it because it was kind of cool. It had this two-step effect, right? Because she really got into my grandmother's dollhouse that we have in my garage and started playing with it again, and she started to paint it because it was just bare wood. And that was all from watching your episode. And then also she just started to go to the library and get horror books that were like young adult horror books too. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Man, this is the first time anyone's ever said something like that to me, and that's incredible. Wow. I'm so glad to hear that, because we think about, I don't know what age we all are. We're about around the same universe. We think about an episode of Tales from the Dark Side that you saw when you were younger or something, and you're like, oh, for me, this is weird because my first one, this is similar to your daughter's in a way. The first horror movie I ever saw was Twilight Zone, the movie. And what a first one to see, because I saw almost 5 genres or subgenres at once. I saw the sort of the social statement, the opening segment. I saw the warm version, the Spielberg one. There are heartstring horror, right? I saw the creature feature, which is the monster on the airplane with John Lithgow, and the one that opened the door for me, which is similar to the one that your daughter, I guess I would say, is Anthony, the kid that can do anything with his mind, and imagines his sister's mouth away and imagines his other sister into a violent cartoon, and none of these people are actually his family and all that. And so it's interesting to think that. I just wonder how much an anthology horror, because it's a bite, like Tales from the Dark Side, Creepshow, Twilight Zone, why that's such a gateway to horror, because you just see this little sliver and you're like, ooh, and it's and it makes you, just the curtains pull back a little bit, and you're like, I want them to pull the side entirely. That's interesting.
It is a little nugget of horror, and it is you're kind of peeking through your fingers, basically. I always think of the Tales from the Dark Side show with the Grither. Do you remember that one? With the big arms that came in through the doors. It was a Christmas episode. It was really fucked up, actually.
I'm gonna watch it tonight, but I can't remember. I don't think I saw that one.
Yeah, I mean, we should be talking about your books and stuff, but I'll just tell you, it's kind of funny. The whole episode, the mom and the grandpa are talking about the Grither getting these 2 little kids. And like, oh, you better watch out. The Grither's going to get you. And at the very end, these gigantic green arms come in through the windows and they grab the mom and the grandfather and they just break their necks. Right?
Whoa.
Yeah, spoiler, but you know. But I remember that as a kid. That just like blew my mind as a kid. You know?
Okay. Well, this is mind bending for me is that Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, was directed by the guy who directed House of the Head, John Harrison. And John Harrison also did the soundtrack, which is to me the greatest horror soundtrack of all time, to Creepshow. So he must have been, man, I've talked to him because I read and blurbed a novel he wrote recently that was phenomenal. He's a super interesting, smart guy, John Harrison. He did the music for, I think, Day of the Dead also, but he did Creepshow for sure. And he directed Tales from the Dark Side. And Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, that segment, you guys see that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. The segment where that demon thing is like, you know, you'll have all your dreams, whatever, as long as you never tell anyone about me. And then he's like, all of his dreams come true. And then he tells his wife about him. And then the wife's face splits open. And this whole time he's been married to that demon, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like that one. Well, that was a gateway shift for me, man.
Yeah.
Hey, what's interesting is I think that works the same way with literature, because when you're talking about like anthologies as a gateway, like I remember like Creepshow came out the year I was born, but I remember like watching it, renting it, but like Creepshow 2, Tales from the Crypt, all that stuff. Even like episodes of Scooby-Doo, like I count as getting me into horror. But with reading, it was like scary stories to tell in the dark. Right. And then my dad got me into like Stephen King, and because he knew I had a short attention span, he gave me like Night Shift and Skeleton Crew. So I was reading Stephen King from a very early age, but they were always the short stories. And you also have published a bunch. I'm actually in the middle of Goblin now. I'm listening to it on audio, and I'm like 4 stories into Goblin, and I'm like, I love the short story aspect to horror as well. So it's funny it works like that.
You know, sometimes I feel like the scariest story I ever heard is the one that I'm like at a party, I go outside with, you know, the beer or whatever, and I'm standing outside alone for a second, and some guy was like, hey, you know, you write horror or something? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, man, one time I was in my basement and my dead aunt peered around the furnace and winked at me and then went back, you know, and then he's like, anyway, you know, and then he walks away or something. And I'm like, I'll never top what just happened here. Like, that's the scariest motherfucking story I've ever heard. I'm just saying, and it's like 3 sentences long. Sometimes I wonder if horror is, I don't want to say best served, but it really, really works in that nugget form. It really works in that little form. And then it all becomes, how good are you at sustaining that mood for a short story, a novella, a novel, a series, whatever it is. And for me, the majority of the novels, they have moments where of like maybe there's humor or it breaks away, whatever. But a lot of those short stories maintain that mood the whole time.
Well, is really that something you would intentionally do with your writing? Because that was something I was kind of curious about too, is that like there are often times where you just kind of give little pieces of what someone is seeing. Like this happens obviously in Bird Box and in Malorie and in Goblin as well, where like you don't really know the whole scene that's happening, but you give a little brief description. Like just for one example, Tom, right, from Bird Box, right? They describe his daughter. I mean, spoiler, but like, you know, he talks about his daughter's death, right? Or like it's described, and you just hear like a few bits of description, but it's not this drawn out thing. Like, are you kind of like giving a little flash, almost like a little flash to kind of startle the reader? Is that like an intentional thing you do?
Yeah, but I wouldn't. I'm always fearful of like thinking of any of this as like intentionally strategic, right? I think of it more like music or something. Like, so for me, there's always sort of like a behind like every book, and maybe the beat's a little different per book or whatever. So in Bird Box, it would have felt like I was slowing the beat down or stretching the beat out or something by going any further about Tom's daughter than that. It seemed like that was on beat, and it was like a good drum sound, and now we move on to like to the next beat and go. Where sometimes you almost feel forced to like, oh fuck, I need to like actually explain who this person is, you know, like, but you want to just stay on that, you know, and so yes, intentional, but I wouldn't say like strategic.
I think that's part of like trusting your audience, though.
Yeah.
Like I know a lot of people complain if like you're watching a movie or if there's a book and something isn't like spelled out for you in big shiny letters, that's like a complaint. But then like, you know, Pete and I always talk about it when we're talking about horror movies. Sometimes like it's the subtlety, it's the, you know, leaving things to the imagination that makes it really scary.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't even realize when I was first writing Bird Box, the original draft, I didn't even realize that I was doing like almost a caricature of what you're saying right now. Like we're literally the monster's off page the whole time. I didn't even realize that. First time I'm working on it, I was like, are you gonna bring these things in it? You know, I'm a third of the way through. I'm like, is there gonna be a moment where you see these things? You know? And I'm like, I don't know. Just keep going. And then like 2/3 in, you're like, you still haven't brought these things in, you know? And then you're like 80% done and you're like, oh, right. No, this is better. Now you can't bring them in. And then I started thinking like, hey, wait a minute. First of all, I know as much as Malorie knows. So to bring one in, to see one, would mean that she saw one. I think Malorie's she's present in every single scene in Bird Box. I think so. Even the story that Tom and Jules tell about them going to retrieve the dogs, they're telling Malorie that story. So even when we leave her for a second, she's listening like you're reading. So I think that at some point I realized like, wait, I know as much as Malorie knows, and that's fine. I don't want to know any more than she does. I don't want to know what they look like. I don't want to see one. I don't want to see one. I want the reader, and I don't want her to see one. And so I didn't realize till I was really almost done with that draft that it's exactly what you're saying. Like it becomes, and not just Bird Box, anything when it's your imagination becomes almost like a Rorschach test, right? Like, what do you see here? What do you see in the darkness down the hall? What do you see on the other side? What do you think is knocking on the door? And I mean, if you guys are anything like me, there's nothing, you know, nothing freakier than that. Nothing tops that. I mean, every now and then something does. And those are the things that like blow our lids, you know, in movies. And that's what we're always looking for, right? The thing on screen or in a book that actually is scarier than what I could imagine.
Yeah.
So with that being said, are you saying that you do not have a definitive, concrete idea of what those things look like, or is it's just personal for you, and it's like literally it could be my interpretation or Danny's interpretation?
You know, at some point I started. Not that I've been asked this so many times or something.
Oh, sorry.
And no. At some point I started answering that like, hey, I know as much as Malorie knows, you know, because I don't want to, I don't know. I wouldn't want to color it by even saying I have an idea or not. I whatever that is, I want it to remain whatever it is. I had some people writing me like, I know what it is. It's giant fruit. I know it. It's like giant. And I was like, giant fruit. And other people were like, this is definitely, you're talking about the internet and you can't like look at the internet. And I mean, all sorts of messages are these. Oh, a lot of people writing me that this was like religious stuff, you know, they couldn't look at the face of God and stuff like that. And I was like, oh man, wow, this is wild. You know, I kind of like that one in a weird way. I'm obviously I didn't think this way I was writing, but I kind of like the idea that it was the face of God came down there and everyone went mad looking at the face of God. Like, that's interesting.
The voice of God, of course, is Alanis Morissette. So we don't know what the face of God is, though. So
there we go.
Also Alanis Morissette.
There you go. Isn't it ironic? But like what I was gonna say is that you know, you talked before about like your writing is almost like music and there's a beat behind it, right? Now with the Bird Box movie, you had you know, Eric Heiser, right? That's the screenwriter's name.
Yeah.
He adapted it. And so it's almost like a musician taking your story and doing like a different genre because the two seem very different.
Yep, I agree.
And it's funny because you mentioned the whole face of God thing. And when I was watching Bird Box, I watched it after I read the book, right? They mentioned demons. The guy from Get Out mentions demons.
Yeah.
And there really isn't talk about demons in the book.
Well, that was almost like the one, and I mean it when I say this, like the one beef I had with the entire rollout and the entire experience was that when they put in the preview what that guy was saying, He was like, it's your worst nightmare. It's demons, whatever. And I'm like, no, that's not what this is. But in the movie, when he says that, someone's like, what are you? He's like, I don't know. It's just some shit I thought of. Right. And I'm like, oh, but in the preview, it made it sound like this is what this is about when it's not. That's literally the only problem I had. And I think that thing that you're talking about, the real difference between the two for me was more like, how do I explain it? The book to me is scarier than the movie. The movie felt more like, not an adventure, but like a survival, like get through this or something. And the book felt more like a single note on a single low note on a synthesizer to me. But I don't, I feel like Bird Box, the movie, could be made on your phone in black and white, and it could be real simple and real little, and like woman, 2 kids, black and white in the river, and then these people in this house, and you don't even really get to see everyone's faces. Everything's just like, how does she even know these people? It could be real, almost like real awesome and indie or something. And I feel like the book feels more like that. But I'm not, that movie is one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, it was in, like, I remember when it came out, it was this like full on sensation, to the point where like your name is now attached to something that had to have a warning label attached to it. Please don't do the Bird Box challenge. And like people were driving in traffic with blindfolds.
Man.
Like, what is that like when your name is now attached to this movie that's become that big of a phenomenon?
Man, it's hard to explain. Like I've read, I remember I read Clockwork Orange, and in the introduction, Anthony Burgess was saying, like, I don't understand why everyone liked this book best, or why this one like is everyone's favorite or whatever. Like, it's not my favorite, whatever. He almost seemed a little grumpy about it. But maybe if I read that intro again now, I wouldn't feel like he was being grumpy. But back then I did. I was like, well, like why would you even complain, right? I mean, who cares? That like this book is amazing, and I have kind of taken that to heart. Meaning, like with Bird Box, it's like if somebody's like, do you think Bird Box overshadows Inspection or this or that? I'm like, great. Do you think Bird Box, do you think that you'll forever be tied to this? Great. Like for me, it's like, dude, I didn't get a book deal till I was like 37. The movie didn't come out till I'm 46 now. So I was 44 when the movie came out. I had like lived an entire life and written like something like 20 novels by the time the book came out even. That for me, it's like, I'm so freaking grateful that this happened, that it's almost hard for me to like think any other way about it in terms of what you're asking. Like, how does it feel to be attached to it? Like Malorie, the character, feels more than a friend to me. She seemed not a lover, but like more like a sister, or even a twin sister, who I'm like, sometimes I'll like look at I have the book right here. Sometimes I'll look at the book and I'll be like, man, good for her. She pulled it off. She did it. And I don't know if that's some sort of like weird defense mechanism, because it's hard to fathom that something you wrote did this or something. But to me, that I have moments where I'm just like glad for her and glad for the book rather than for me. And I'm just like happy to be like connected to it at all, if that makes sense. That might all sound kind of like weird and heady, but it is a bizarre thing to wrap your mind around.
Weirdest thing about your answer there is your age, because you look 5 years younger than both of us, and we're almost 39. When I thought you were like earlier, you were like, we're about the same age. I was like, yeah, we're probably around the same age. And now you're like, you're a few years older than us, and I'm like, God, I look old. Shit.
No, you really don't. Not at all. Neither of you do. But yeah, no, I know that whole number thing is freaking. But I mean, think about it. Like if this had happened, Bird Box coming out and this is hit movie when you're like 23 or 24 or something, I imagine that even the nicest guy in the world would be like, well, I guess this is how it works. This is like, now everything I do is gold, right? And I'm not saying that it's not gold with everything we all do, but to get a book deal at 37 years old, like the gratitude on this end is like freaking eternal, dude. I have a crate over here in my office that actually has the Dean Crawford Rolling Hills address on it from Goblin. And in that crate is like 25 other novels that haven't come out yet, because when Bird Box was picked up and came out or whatever, I had already been writing for years. And it wasn't just like writing like trunk novel. I mean, Bird Box was one of those originally one of those 25, and then I pulled it out and showed my manager and we talked about it and blah, blah, blah. Unburied Carol was written before Bird Box came out. Inspection was. Goblin is the second book I ever wrote. I wrote Goblin in, man, when did I? 05. In 05. Yeah. But keep in mind, like severe rewrites, So it's almost like you could almost argue like it was an outline back then. It was so different than what it's become, or it was like the world's most detailed outline because it was a book. But so with all that in mind, it's like the gratitude of this whole Bird Box thing, like that's eternal, man.
As someone that writes as well, that sounds like such an exciting kind of experience, just like writing a whole story and then just essentially just putting it aside and then writing a whole nother story.
Oh, yeah.
Because to me, some of the anxiety about writing is like, I always feel like if you write a whole story, you have to go and then edit it and you have to keep doing drafts and like you're always kind of stuck in this one story. But I mean, I know I've read your website and stuff that like, you wrote like 14 novels while you were on tour with your band, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I just can't imagine what that feels like. It must be like you're on like a high or something,
Yeah. Well, dude, it's exactly what you just said. It's the non-editing, it's the non-rewriting stuff, right? So I remember about 7 years into writing books, I remember saying to myself, 7 years of writing is going to be followed by 7 years of rewriting. I was like, the pile was starting to get big enough where, I was about 2 a year. So it was like, there's 14. And I'm like, dude, eventually you have to edit this shit, But what it's turned out to be, though, it's almost amazing because how like, what's the right phrase? Like, where you kind of, when you not, I don't want to say when you're older, but some time passes and you're like, man, I could do that so much better now. Well, guess what? Well, I actually have the opportunity to do that because all these other books, they're just the crappiest rough draft version in this trade. So I can literally pull one out or mostly I'm writing new ones, but I could pull one out and be like, you know what? Let's fucking fix this one. Let's edit this one now and let's make it amazing. So what I love about that, though, is that it's not like I wrote it that long ago, but it has an energy that you're describing, that high of writing all these stories in a row, coupled with now someone that has gone through rewrites and understands rewriting. And so it seems like there's a sweet spot going on right now. It's a good time to take one out of the crate and work on it.
Yeah. Wow. And it's interesting about Bird Box too, right? Because you wrote it obviously a while ago. You wrote it before COVID. And for your stuff, I essentially got into your stuff. I read Inspection. Inspection is actually my first review I ever did for my other YouTube channel, Anchorpete. I reviewed Inspection. Yeah. That's my very first video. And then I read that and then I did Bird Box and Malorie, but it's all during COVID. And it just kind of blows my mind how like prescient it is because all the stuff with the blindfold is just like a metaphor for the mask stuff. And it's just like you wrote it all before COVID, it just blows my mind.
Yeah, man. I had a weird moment in the middle of COVID where I was like, I got to grab my wallet, keys, phone, mask, blindfold. I was like, wait, hold on. No, we don't need blindfolds. But I've been so entrenched in that world and I sense that thing too. The weird thing is, and I don't mean to get too like political when I say this, but the weird thing is that Malorie, the super pro masker, is also the most conservative in the book Malorie. Whereas her, lifestyle wise and living wise, not politically, obviously. And Tom is our progressive. And he's like, I'm all for the blindfold and not looking, but we can make this better. We can make this better for ourselves, and we can make the bringing water to our freaking cabin. We can make better. Like Malorie's like, all we need is this piece of cloth, nothing more. Literally, do not try to better this, or we're going to die. Like you just need a fucking sock over your eyes. And and so in a bizarre way, the hyper pro masker is also our most conservative. I know those are just labels and words and it doesn't line up exactly with the world, but it is an interesting sort of like something in there to me.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of stressful, like reading about this disaster, this apocalypse in your book. And then like, it's like literally happening outside where it's like spreading and then you're trapped inside. It's just the parallels, very unnerving.
Man, so okay, I was asked to blurb Wanderers by Chuck Wendig, and it's like a 1,000-page like pandemic. I mean, like this kind of like story, right? And I was like during lockdown, and I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this right now, And I started reading it, and I'm like, this is fucking great. And I started reading it and getting into it, and then I was like, wait a minute, not only is this great, but I almost feel like this is exactly what I needed to read, and the reason why is because it kind of became like a little bit cathartic, where it was like there was like some similarities in Chuck's book, just like in The Stand, and just like anything with a pandemic and this, right? And there was some thoughts of like, okay, if we are able to imagine this, if I was able to not predict but come up with a scenario close to what is now, and Chuck is, and Stephen King did, and then maybe we're also able to solve this, where it was like, thank God there's not a situation going on outside our house that literally there's no parallel for, where we're like, what the, like literally we've never imagined something like this. So there was something like calming in that way for me, and I ended up ripping through that thing and absolutely loving it.
I kind of wanted to like tie both of the things that you've done, you said in the last few minutes about during the pandemic, and also about how you purposely never showed the monsters in Bird Box, and I want to kind of spin that to a movie that you just produced with your new production company, Spin a Black Yarn. We need to do something. Pete and I got to interview Max Booth III.
Oh, great!
Totally awesome guy.
Yeah,
and he and we loved the movie, and he translated his own book to the screenplay, and that's one of the things in that book is, it was done during the pandemic. It wasn't meant to be the pandemic, but it felt like it. And you also never really see what's outside like haunting this family. So what was it like producing that? What was it like doing that during COVID? Like, just tell us about that experience.
Well, okay, it was incredible. So Spin a Black Yarn is me and my manager Ryan Lewis, and after Bird Box, because he is an executive producer on Bird Box, but we didn't have any say, which is fine. That's a whole other conversation. But we could not be more fun. But we didn't have any say, and he's like, we should start a production company and try to be producers on future stuff of yours, okay? And eventually that led to, we should also do other people's books. And this led to, we need to do something, and Max and this. And Ryan did something absolutely genius. So we shopped the script, Max's script. The first people we shopped it to were Sean O'Grady, the director, and Bill Sturts, his partner producer. Hoping that maybe we would find like financing through them, and they would be partners in producing and that kind of thing. And this is the first people we shopped to. It was in June of 2020. And Sean read it, and he calls us back, and he's like, hey, actually, I want to direct this. And we were like, what? Like, he was like, not only can I find the financing, I actually want to direct this movie. And he brought up the things you're talking about, how this is a COVID-friendly setup. There's only 5 main players. Everything that you were saying, how it fit like perfectly. It feels like the pandemic, but it's not a pandemic story, all that stuff. And here's what Ryan did that was genius. He was like, and Sean said, we want to make this right away. And then Ryan said, okay, because you're the first people we shopped it to, we have to ensure that you're actually going to make this right away. We can't say to you like, great, take it away. And then like, you don't make it for 3 years and we never shopped it to someone else, and what just happened to us, right? So in the contract, Ryan had it where it has to be made this year, like in 2020, which Sean said he wanted to do. And so I don't want to say that Ryan made Sean put his money where his mouth is, but Ryan was saying like, you're saying you want to do it right now? All right, you got to do it right now. And I was like, dude, I've never seen this in a contract. This is smart. But Sean was already planning, and he did it in October, only mere months after that meeting. And a year after we shopped it to them, and Max probably mentioned this, a year after that, it was showing at Tribeca Film Fest, like to the day, a year later. So I, who only live like maybe not even 3 miles from where the movie was filmed.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't allowed on set. Nobody was. It was the actors were in a hotel that shares a parking lot with the office building. First floor of that office building is a soundstage studio where the bathroom was built and all the equipment and blah blah blah. And it was they had there was like COVID tests daily for all them. Max came over to my house one day, and I had to be tested after that to show that he wasn't around anyone that had it. And he was tested, that kind of thing. And I didn't go on set at all. So this is 3 miles away and I wasn't allowed. But I came to the wrap party and saw some footage and hung out with everyone. And it was incredible. The whole thing was freaking incredible. But between Max's script, Sean wanting to do it, and Ryan giving that little like kick in the ass of like, if you want to do it, you got to do it now. That thing got made.
Yeah, we loved it. We reviewed it on the channel. I have nightmares about Pat Healy eating alcohol pads in a bathroom. But so you said you want to use that production company to also do some more of your own projects. So does that mean you're gonna have more of your work in a possibly go into there? Maybe a certain cartoon telekinetic pig.
That's what I'm talking about, man. Now you know. I mean, there is so much to talk about. I mean, I can just tell you this much. I can't give details, but which is so bizarre to me, and something that one day I would love to like shatter this somehow. Everything feels like so like it's like Fort Knox. Why can't we just talk about this stuff? It's, you know what I mean? Come on, man, right? But whatever. Inspection is set up in an amazing place. Unbury Carol is set up in an amazing situation. House Bottom Lake was. Now we're bringing it elsewhere, but there's some great stuff about that. Other stuff is set up. Malorie, there's good news recent on that front. There's a lot of exciting stuff. There's a short story that is set up somewhere. There's I wrote like a serial novel called Carpenter's Farm. I wrote on my website. That we're shopping as like a TV series. We're shopping Goblin as a TV series. That would be amazing, man. To have like, I don't know. Personally, I would be happy with just a different Gobliner every episode, but I understand most people want some sort of through line that still sort of, maybe I would say that still highlights a singular Gobliner each time. What show did I just watch that was kind of like that? That where it's like there's an overarching theme, but then you get like, oh, Lost. I just started watching Lost, and how there's the overarching theme, but with each episode you get each person's like backstory. So now imagine a whole different tone, but Goblin. I don't know what that theme necessarily, that story necessarily is, but you know, Walter in one, Neil Nash in another, Roman Emperor in another, that kind of thing. Would be amazing.
I love the camp story. Walter Camp is.
He's the ultimate Gobliner to me, because it's like the ultimate Stockholm syndrome. This guy could not love Goblin more than he does. He's the town historian. He's obsessed with it, and then he's also like that place is going to kill him. Yeah. You know, I mean, he's absolutely like peaked out of his mind, man. He sleeps on a transparent bed, for fuck's sake, you know, because he doesn't want anything hiding beneath it, you know. So he's to me the ultimate Gobliner, where he's like destroyed and enamored with the city. Destroyed by and enamored with.
Bringing up camp and that story, you know, there's that documentary about you. Unfortunately, I can't remember the title right off the top of my head, but it was like 30 minutes. I was just watching on YouTube just before.
Oh, cool.
Is that was you with like the Frankenstein mask?
Yeah.
Yeah. So right, it begins with that quote from your mom saying it, right? That you were like scared of everything, right?
Yeah.
So is that like the camp story? Is that like drawn from a personal place, like of just sort of being scared of things when you were growing up?
Yeah, probably. And there's I think there's even a section in there where he calls his sister to ask about like maybe like did everyone else saw a ghost in the house or something like that. And I had a moment in my, this is such a freaky moment, man. My mom, how old was I then? I don't know, a teen, whatever, 13 or something. And my mom went to see a psychic, and back then she came home with a cassette tape of the session. And we have these like kind of like an old wooden stereo with dual cassette deck, you know, one of those things. And I was like, or she said, like, don't listen to this. Which, come on, right? The minute your mom says that, right? And they left the house, and I put that tape on, and I can still hear the like treble hiss of that tape. I can still hear like the room sound of, and it's these big speakers. I probably didn't even like the volume was set from the last time we were listening to an album or something. You know, it was super loud. And my mom says to the psychic, like, everyone in the house has seen a ghost except Josh. And I was home alone. And I was like, what do you mean everyone in the house has seen a ghost? And then the woman in this like psychic-y voice is like, well, Josh isn't ready to see a ghost yet. And I was like, oh, and I like hit stop. And I was like, wait, what does this mean? And then I got like angry and I like ran into like a bathroom. I don't know why. I ran into one of the bathrooms, but in the mirror, I was like, show yourself, show yourself. And then I was like, no, don't. And I ran out of the house.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
I know. But like, I can still hear my mom saying like, everyone, what do you mean everyone?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Ryan, my younger brother, saw a ghost. Like, what the fuck are we talking? What do you mean everyone? Josh isn't ready yet. And then I was like, fuck you, you're right. I'm not ready yet.
Dude, I can relate. If your show got made by like Showtime or HBO, I mean, especially HBO, that would be incredible, right? Any kind of premium, like either streaming service or cable channel, I think they would make a fucking awesome Goblin.
How so we've had a million discussions about like the tone of this, right?
Yeah.
Because I kind of feel like with Goblin, what's the right phrase? Like once I had the town and the name of the town and all that, I had my main character, meaning, and it was so liberating because any story can happen inside of Goblin, any character, and the main character is present. It's Goblin. So that would mean to me in a TV way, you have to nail that fucking city more than we would even have to nail the individual stories maybe at first. Have to nail that city. And the things that cross my mind are more like not fantasy, but like Tim Burton, but he's too far. Like David Lynch is like, that's too weird. It's not like, that's not what I mean. There's like a specific tone there.
Yeah. What about Danny, right? What about that friggin' anthology that we watched on Shudder? I can't think of the name of it. That has what's his face? Oh, god damn it.
Oh, that amazing
Mortuary Collection.
Mortuary Collection. Yeah.
That's great, dude. I love that movie. Did you guys like that movie?
I love it.
Yeah.
That was in our top 10 of 2020.
I loved it.
We both had it on our list.
Yeah, I loved it. I love too that like that was one of those that I don't want to say like random, kind of randomly picked one night. I was like at home, I'm like, oh, let's try this one. And I was like, fuck, I like this one. And I think you're right, Pete. I think that's closer to what we're talking about than David Lynch, than Tim Burton. Like, because those, as brilliant as those guys are, that's like so intentionally stylized. And I think Goblin has to just kind of like feel more unsettling. And there's like, I don't know if they have towns like this where you guys live, but in Michigan, there's like this like town called Frankenmuth of all names. That's sort of like it's called like Little Bavaria, right? And it's got those like Bavarian looking like fucking like buildings and like A-frame like buildings and homes and stuff. It almost seems like a ski town. And whenever I go through Frankenmuth, I'm like, this is closer to what I'm talking about. Not that Goblin would look like this, but that it feels a little bit like you're out of joint, a little bit like you're somewhere else now. You're not in Michigan specifically. Now you're somewhere else. And if you could capture that, and one idea that I thought was brilliant that the director attached said was to call it Michigan, but film it somewhere else. So like to film it in, he was saying film it like overseas.
Mm-hmm.
You're still like, there's this thing of like, this is Michigan. Oh, this is America. And it's like a little off-putting because it's not actually, but we're telling you that it is. And I was like, that's fucking good.
Yeah. Well, you know, when you're setting up the Goblin town itself, right? Were you like mapping it out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like it reminds me because like there's Jim Butcher, he wrote all those Dresden novels and they had a game based on it, right? And one of the aspects of that role-playing game is that you would literally like map out a city. You'd be like, okay, this is where people can eat. This is where, the sporting events are. And you made the city for your story that you were going to eventually play. So like, did you do something like that for Goblin?
Yep. Yeah, I started with like the main thoroughfares, Christmas and North South, and then it led to like Neptune and the street names and Goblin games, and I remember what's it called? One of the first landmarks was the adult movie theater. That's interesting to know. If I'm ever a city planner, like we're gonna start with the adult theater.
Yes.
And then we'll fan out the whole city will fan out from there. We must stick with the important things, guys. And but I do remember the Milky Way of all names. Jesus, it almost sounds gross right now. Like that was like the first landmark, and then quickly followed by the Woodruff as like the hotel and the cemetery. Them standing. Oh, and I also like the idea that the cemetery is just like kind of in the middle of town. You know, it's like it's just there, and there's another city that I toy around with where the cemetery is literally like town square is the cemetery, and then all the buildings like around it and stuff.
Well, I have one of your books right here. I was looking for Wanderers before. Yeah, I got an early copy, proof to read. I'm going to review it when I'm done. But this book is, I'd say it's a bit bigger than your other stories, right? Ghoul in the Cape.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, like, what makes this story separate to where it's so much bigger than your other stories?
I mean, without sounding like too deep or something, because I think it has, that book is more about like their journey, like their trip, their who they become along the way, versus Malorie's feels more like actually getting to the fucking school for the blind, whereas Unburied Carol is actually getting to the funeral to bust it up before she's buried alive. Yeah, it doesn't. Ghoul in the Cape has an end goal, and it's weird. I don't mean to have, every book doesn't mean to be so fucking, I mean, even Inspection in a way is like the end goal is to get out, right? And I don't mean for everything to have such a linear like path or something, but a lot of them seem to have that. Ghoul in the Cape has that as well. I don't know. I knew when I started it that it was a really big story, and I was really excited to work on it. And then as a writer, word count. So whereas with Bird Box, the rough draft was like 4,300 words a day, and Carol, which is the hottest I've ever ran, was 5,300 a day.
Holy shit!
I know, it was unbelievable, man. It was fucking incredible. It was like just sat down, and then like hours were gone, and you're like, okay, done. Like every day in a row. Ghoul in the Cape, though, I understood that if I did that and I got to like 80,000 words, I was going to be out of gas. So counterintuitively, the bigger book, I did less per day on. I did about 1,000 a day, but it took almost the whole year. It was 300 days of doing it. I mean, that book is 300,000 words, whereas Bird Box is 68.
Right.
So I mean, it was a real thing. And the rewrite, dude, oh my God, because the rough draft's like 1,100 pages or something. The rewrite, I mean, you get to page 400, which is like inspection length, and you still have 700 to go. It was starting to approach this overwhelming. You almost had to reach this sort of Zen discipline, where you're like, just do a little bit every day. Shh, don't don't think about don't fucking start thinking about it. 700 pages to go. Yeah. But that one means an enormous amount to me. I mean, they all do, and I hope that all our books mean like this to all of us writers. But Ghoul in the Cape is I don't know. That one, I'm really excited that you got that. So did you get that from Paul? Did you like write Paul Miller?
I did. Yeah. I saw some other people had gotten it, and I was like, dude, I would love to read one of your books like in advance. Whenever I do reviews, I usually get it after the book has been out for a while, and but to get it in anticipation, because it's coming out in December, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, just to be.
I have the same one you do. I haven't seen like the hardcover yet or anything. I have the same exact one you have.
Oh, look at that.
And I wanted to tell you, I saw that inspection review video that you did. And I don't think that I definitely did not know going into tonight that was you. And when you said that earlier, I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, fuck, I saw that. I did.
Well, it was pretty lame. It was like one of my first videos I ever made. There's a lot of like just shots of trees, because I didn't have footage to use. But that's awesome that you saw that, man.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that. It's really, I can even hear your voice now doing it. I remember when you said that, I was like, wait a minute, I fucking saw that. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Thank you.
I just kind of, I'm just glad you didn't like crap on his book in your first review. Otherwise,
I know obviously you're kidding about not ragging on the first review in the book and all that, but I did want to say, because this is interesting to me, that even if you had, like, this is sort of my, I don't know why I feel like saying this right now, but this is sort of like my like take on that or something. It's like, I don't think of, and I think I talked about this in that documentary thing, I don't think of this as what's the right phrase, as like each book represents me. I look at it as like the body of work in the end will and does. And that doesn't mean like if you didn't like this one, like I'll win you over in 10 years. I mean, maybe that's what that means. But what I really mean is like it's one of like the benefits of being like I guess prolific is that the spotlight is not like if you only write one book in your life or you've been working on it for years, like you were saying, Pete, you write it and then you're rewriting and you're stuck in this one story. It starts to feel like this has to represent you in full. It starts to feel like all of me is in here. And if somebody doesn't like that book, then they don't like me. They don't like all of me. They don't like what represents me. But if you're prolific, that spotlight is dispersed over every book evenly. In Bird Box, no more than Black Man Wheel, no more than Ghoul in the Cape. And so it starts to become not less pressure to write it well, but less pressure of what someone thinks about it. Because this is only one sliver, in the same way that maybe Death Proof isn't your favorite Tarantino movie, which I love that movie, and I'm sure you guys do too. But yeah. Let's say it's Sally's. Wow, there's actually like a painting of a woman, but this is Allison. But look, let's say Allison's favorite is not Death Proof. That's okay. Maybe Inglourious Basterds is, and that's like the beauty of having like numerous like works of art. And I feel like in the end, it's like like Hitchcock's whole body of work. If we watched all fucking 55 of his movies, we might only love half of them, and we still consider him like the greatest thing that ever lived. So, right. So even, and again, I know you were kidding about that review comment, but even if you had tore it up, who gives a shit? Great, let's roll. Let's write another one. Let's get a drink. Let's keep going.
That's awesome, man. That's a great philosophy.
Yeah, but it just blows my mind, like writing like thousands and thousands of words per day. Like usually for writers, they write like 2,000 words per day tops. Yeah. But you're saying you're writing 5,000 for a book? Like how quickly do you write a book then in that time?
Well, keep in mind that was the rough draft. Again, I mean, like some of the rewrites have been like so extensive. Okay, Bird Box was written in 26 days, the rough draft. Then I cleaned it up some, and we sold it and to HarperCollins. And then they gave me enough notes. It wasn't like it was more. They gave me enough macro notes. Like there were originally 14 members in the house instead of 7, and they were like, "We think if there's 7 instead of 14, we can get to know like Tom, Jules, these people better than we get to know them now because the cast is so big." And my argument was, I don't want Malorie to get to know anyone. I want this to feel like temporary, and like everything's like who the fuck's talking? I don't even know that woman that sleeps down the hall, and I thought that was like upsetting or unnerving in its own weird way. But finally, I was like, okay, fine, you're right. All right, fine. Let's just do 7. Let's chop the cast members in half. So then it became a question: do you just, when you get rid of these 7 characters, do you just attribute their dialogue to someone else? Or do you rewrite this scene as if Tom and Jules, now that you know Tom and Jules? And I was like, fuck, I gotta rewrite this scene. I can't just be like, get rid of Alex said and put in Tom said, like, no, I gotta redo this.
Right.
What that resulted in was rewriting Bird Box from scratch, except for the birth scene. That's the only scene that was untouched. So the question becomes, like, if a tree falls in the woods, like, what did they buy? Because they didn't put out the book that they bought. I rewrote it again from scratch after they bought the book. Like, right. And so how long did that rough draft, how long did it take to write that book? 26 days and a rewrite from scratch and rewrites of that rewrite from scratch. But the rough drafts can and often are like fucking awesome typhoon experiences, just explosions.
Oh man, that's so cool. I envy that. That's like I wish I could have that feeling,
Well, I mean, not to get too preachy or something, but think about it like this, and I don't expect you to be like, okay, but but if if you know that you're going to rewrite it, and not necessarily from scratch, but if you know you're going to do all this to it, doesn't that mean that it doesn't really matter how right or wrong, good or bad the rough draft is? And once that takes root, it's not necessarily write a bad book, although that's fine too. It's more like just fucking go, go, go. Like we're playing Guitar Live or something. Just fucking get it. And later on, we're going to edit all this shit together and it's going to sound like the greatest little song in the world. Right. And so with that philosophy, because you know you're going to do all that heavy lifting later, then you're just, it's so liberating. You're like, what's the difference? I can write what I think is the greatest thing ever right now, and I'm going to fucking rewrite it to death. So let's just roll. Let's bolt through this. And what happens is you start to like you're having such like momentum through writing it that you're coming up with all these other ideas, and it sort of ends up becoming like the most detailed outline imaginable.
Wow, that is awesome, man. And it's inspiring too, you know. Danny, Josh mentioned Carpenter's Farm before. Now, Josh, you pretty much like would write an installment of that, and then like you would just post it online, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Like Danny, on his website, you can just look at each chapter. It's for free, and you can just click on each chapter. And he just wrote it during the pandemic. It was incredible.
It's still just there. It's crazy. There's no number of views listed, no reviews, no likes or dislikes, no stats. It's just a free novel, just literally free, just sitting on my website. I have no idea how many people have read it. I have no idea really much about that side of things. And the idea was to write it, rewrite, like fix the spelling, whatever, and then post it. And it was like serialized that way for like a number of weeks. I have one of the coolest things about that experience was a fellow named Chris Campbell ended up writing like a soundtrack with each installment that I posted. And I have this like CD that he made.
Oh, nice.
Soundtrack for the album, which I should mail to you guys. You should give me your addresses after and I'll mail you guys. It's on the website, but this is fucking awesome. It's like, this is the soundtrack for a novel that this guy did, you know? And it's amazing.
The Carpenter's Farm, you were saying that you don't know the views or like if people liked it or not, but on that same webpage, there's the list of people that have like made stories inspired by it too.
Yep.
Right. And then like Brian Keene, right? That's the no, Shane Keene. I'm sorry. The Keene's confused. But Shane Keene, he wrote poems, right? And then Michael Bailey wrote a novella.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that the only examples of people writing stuff inspired by your work, or are the other stories inspiring people too?
I don't know. I have here. I'll show you this too. This is pretty amazing.
This is like show and tell with Josh Mallerman.
Hey, I'm all for it, man.
Yeah.
This is pretty amazing. These are essays on the film and book of Bird Box.
Holy shit!
It's like an academic.
Like that's out there in the public.
Yeah. Seeing the apocalypse. It's like here. This is wild, right?
Yeah.
Bird Box is one of several apocalyptic narratives of the late 2010s in which the body is not only vulnerable, but also can lead to the destruction of itself through its normal functioning. Whoa. Yeah, I mean, these are like academic essays on the book and the movie.
That is so fucking cool.
So that, I know, this is like incredible to me.
Yeah.
This is like amazing. But I think Carpenter's Farm would be, but I put out the bat signal for that one. Someone told me to do that. I don't remember who. Someone said you should ask if people want to like play along, if they want to do drawings or photos or this. I was like, oh shit, that's brilliant. And then I did, and it resulted in, again, the soundtrack, Shane's poems, Jimmy Doom, who's this amazing writer, lives in the Detroit area. He wrote stories based on it or inspired by. And Michael Bailey's novella was even nominated for like awards and stuff. And I mean, it was a real moment that we all had during that lockdown where we were all like horrified of what's going on in the world, and we had this little fun fucking thing to like do together.
Yeah, I distinctly remember that time. Like I remember you were like tweeting about it, and like, you know, just everyone was so nervous and so overwhelmed by what was going on, and you just wanted to get something out there. I remember that. That's kind of what got me into your stuff, you know.
Oh wow, cool. Oh, let me show you this.
Yeah. Let's go.
Philip Fracassi, the writer, the great writer.
Right.
made one copy of the book. So I have Carpenter's Farm. I have one copy in existence. He sent me this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like I'm like, and then I get to keep it, you know, amongst the others, like on the shelf, which is fucking awesome.
That is awesome. Speaking of him, he gave you know, the guy that gave me Ghoul in the Cape also gave me his Boys in the Valley book. So I'm gonna read that after I finish.
Great. Yeah, dude, he's great, man. Philip's great. And I just read which one is it that I just read? Beneath the Pale Sky. His short story collection is really, really good. Like really, like one of the best. One of the best I've read. And I told him as much, and I blurbed as much. It's got tons of variety and totally unsettling, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And he's a great guy too. He's an amazing guy.
Yeah, you know, maybe Danny, maybe we'll get around to interviewing him at some point too.
Yeah, I'm like Pete. If you couldn't tell, Pete is the much more avid reader of the two of us. I'm the more avid film watcher of the two of us. So I'm just like making a list because I have like a list of like books that I want to like find on audio so that I can like run and listen to them. And this is all like I'm like keeping a running list on like my notepad. So
all right, then give me what's an amazing like newer scary movie that you saw that I should watch maybe later tonight.
Have you seen We Need to Do Something? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
That would have been amazing.
I know it's like the talk of like the internet. Pete and I reviewed Malignant last week.
Oh, I loved it. Did you guys love it too?
I don't think I've enjoyed a last 30 minutes of a movie more in my entire life.
I know, dude. I know. I absolutely loved it, man. I couldn't believe where it went. I guess we'll call it the reveal scene. I grabbed Allison and I was like, wait, just come here. I got to show you something. And I like rewound it a bit. I mean, it's that kind of thing where I was like, you got to fucking see this, man. This is unbelievable.
Everything from I called it like there's a point in the movie where it feels like you enter an early 1980s women's like caged heat movie in prison, and then everything just goes buck wild from there.
It just it's like it feels like an artist, a filmmaker unchained. It felt like he was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna fucking let it go on this one. Not that he seems restrained on anything else, because I mean I love all of his shit. I mean he's great. Dude.
We just did a month on our channel of like the James Wan movies, like covering them. So
man,
Josh, it's been like a true pleasure. You know, I've been into your books for like since COVID began, and I've seen a bunch of your interviews. I knew this was gonna be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for talking to us tonight. And we're hoping that maybe in the future you might want to come back on the show.
Oh man, yeah, 100%. I mean, my only regret is this isn't in person, and the three of us aren't like at a bar. But yeah, otherwise it's been perfect. Thank you, and yeah, man, I would love to do this again. And also, I don't know if you guys feel the same, but I mean, that did not feel like an hour, man. That felt like that really, honestly, felt like nothing.
Yeah,
I always get like really panicky before interviews, no matter if it's like Zoom or when I would like used to interview people in person, and then like as soon as the interview starts, I'm like, oh, this is so easy. It's just talking to somebody.
I know, man. Same thing with me. It's like, what the fuck, man? I don't know I don't know anything about my books, and then it starts. You're like, hello.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome.